Oh, thank you very much. My name is Leo Booth, and I'm a recovering alcoholic. And I just want to say it's a real honor and a privilege to be able to be with you this weekend. And I know that we're in a place called Mandan, yes? Mandan, and it's near Bismarck. And I'm real excited about that because because for the last 2 years on my calendar, because Al, as you probably know, is very proactive. 2 years ago, he called me and booked me to come here. So for 2 years, Bismarck has been on my calendar for 2011. And I live in Long Beach, California. And people say, oh, you're keeping the commemoration of the sinking of the Bismarck? I didn't know you were German. There's a lady running around here, and she greeted me warmly. She said, God, I've got all your CDs and tapes and your books. It's an honor to meet you, Father Martin. I said, no, he's dead. But I knew him, and he was a Pied Piper of recovery, as many of you know, who went through treatment. He did a wonderful talk called Chalk Talk, and he'll be forever remembered as one of the pioneers of recovery. But she didn't stop there. She was a talker. She said, I think you are from Ohio. I said, Ohio? She said, Ohio. I said, no, I'm from England. She said, but you sound as though you're from Ohio. Well, I've been to Ohio. Didn't stay long, but I remember visiting it. But the main thing is that you're an incredible group of people, and you should know that. I go to many places to speak. Not all of them are as warm or as loving as you are, and you do it, of course, in your inimitable way. But you do it, and that's the main thing. And I think all of you who've been at this conference know that we were very touched last night to hear the AA talk of Mark, and if I may say so, also the part two of the story from Zelda. I share that because speakers have the great opportunity of being able to let you into their lives. Why don't you have a seat? Yeah. She was knocking on my door last night for 10 minutes. I wouldn't let her out. But we have an opportunity to share something of our lives and hopefully touch you. And all of us do it in our own way. And the 12-step program is a phenomenal program. It's amazing. And one of the reasons it's amazing is that it is not one story. It's many stories. And there's not just one way to work this program. And the other thing is that there are no gurus. Now, there are people who think they're gurus, but you and I know better. And the reason for that is it's a spiritual program. A lot of people don't understand that because they confuse it with religion. Religion is what you're born into. So you're born a Lutheran, or you're born Catholic, you're born Episcopalian, whatever it may be, Jewish. Spirituality is a choice that you make. You made the choice to live the spiritual life. And spirituality includes all the major religions of the world, but it also includes those people who've never felt comfortable in any church or synagogue. And yet put them on a mountaintop, put them beside a lake, let them experience the birth of a child, and they know something of spirituality. And later on, you'll hear me make a mention of the fact of how I came to the United States. But it was because I thought deeply about the difference between religion and spirituality. I've said it on other tapes, and I'll say it again tonight. Religion is man-made. Spirituality is God-given. Religion has divided people for far too long. Spirituality teaches the world to hold hands. Bob and Bill were amazing because it could have been so easy in the 30s to have said, having had a religious awakening, that they didn't. And the reason they didn't was because of Bill's wife, Lois. Because when he was talking about maybe calling the 12 step, having had a religious awakening, she said, Bill, because she had a very loud voice. And he said, what, Lois? And she said, don't say religious, say spiritual. And a miracle was born. Not many speakers can say this, because most speakers are born in this country. I was born in England. And maybe one of the greatest gifts America has given to the world is the 12-step program. Thank you. And I'm sure many of you would agree with me that if the world practiced the 12-step program, there would be less division and war in this world. So the 12-step program is very powerful. Like many of you, I grew up as a Roman Catholic, educated by the Jesuits. But it was a wonderful time for me because there was a great pope. There was a great pope on the throne. His name was Pope John the 23rd. He was Italian. He loved to eat and he loved to drink, and he had a sense of humor. One day somebody said to him, Your Holiness, how many people work at the Vatican? And he said, about half. That's the kind of Pope I like. My mother was Church of England, which is Episcopalian. So although you know me as Father Leo, it's Father Leo because for 26 years I belong to the Episcopal Church. So for many of you, you didn't know that. You thought Father Leo, Roman Catholic, but actually it's Father Leo, Episcopalian. And of the last 10 years, I've been involved in a church that I love dearly, and it's called Unity, that produces something called the Daily Word, and is based on very much spiritual thinkings like the 12 step. But our story begins, for me, with what every story should begin with. And that is, what was it like? Now, what happened to you? And what is it like now? Now, I've told you I was born in England. I'm not the only alcoholic who was born in England. I don't know whether some of you know it, especially if you're younger, but we had a prime minister called Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill used to drink a bottle of brandy a day. That was just a brandy. He was very humorous. One day, Lady Mortimer said to him, Winnie, Winnie, you're drunk. And Winston Churchill said to her, Madam, you're ugly. But I'll wake up sober in the morning. She was quick to say to him, Winnie, Winnie, if I was your wife, I'd put poison in your soup. Madam, if I was your husband, I'd drink it. Now, if you listen to alcoholics, there's always been a sense of humor with us. And there's a reason. When you've experienced hell, maybe humor is the only thing that's going to keep you alive. And St. Augustine said, for those of us in recovery, laughter is the language of angels. And so I'm not the only one who's found that in AA meetings, whatever the story is, there's always laughter. Now, I grew up in a public school in England. Some of you are not familiar with public schools. Public schools in England mean it's not open to the public. You have to pay to go to that school. It's a boys' school. And at 16, we were allowed to drink beer. And that's when I tasted beer, alcohol, for the first time. It wasn't so much that I got drunk. It wasn't so much that I liked the taste. But I liked how I felt when I drank. Yeah, I'm 5'6", 5'8" on a good day. When I drank alcohol, I felt 6'2". Here's a funny thing. In Mandan, on a Saturday night, I had a stutter. A stutter. You know a stutter? I had a stutter. When I drank, I lost the stutter. I thought I'd found a friend. I thought I'd found a friend. Alcohol seduced me. Because whatever problem I seem to have, and do remember, this stuff is legal. I'm an alcoholic who stands before you, really not a drug taker. I'm an alcoholic. If I was to tell you the truth, I smoked marijuana twice. Once I got an erection. The second time I got a headache. If it had been the other way around, I may have continued to use it. But I'm mainly alcoholic. That's me. I fit right in here with all of you. And I like many of you because it's progressive, this disease. Many of us, by the way, are educated. Many of us went to school. I went to 3 universities. In 1971, I was ordained into the Church of England and let loose on a parish. And I remember saying to the other priests, I'm going to find the lost sheep, those lost and lonely little souls. And I know where they are. They're in the bar. In those days, we used to wear black suits and a collar. And I'll tell you, when I walked into a bar, people noticed me. They said, you're the kind of priest we like. You drink like we drink. You smoke like we smoke. You throw up like we throw up. My church, full of drunks. People came from the bars to listen to me. People never knew what I was going to say. I never knew what I was going to say. And I've always said, because I've said it, if you're an alcoholic and a truck driver, there's got to be times you're drunk in the truck. If you're an alcoholic and a nurse, there's got to be times you're drunk in the hospital. If you're a priest and an alcoholic, you're going to be drunk doing the services. Follows. I remember once doing a funeral. Now, as you all know, you're supposed to stop before the hole. That's the smart way. You let the coffin go in the hole and you stay at the top. I was drunk. Followed the coffin into the hole. But it was an Irish funeral. Nobody noticed. Then somebody said the priest is in the hole. Took them about 10 minutes. They got me out. I was full of dirt. And here's an interesting thing. In Mandan on a Saturday night, nobody said anything. Wouldn't you have thought somebody would have said, you've just been in a hole? Are you all right? Nobody said anything. Now, the reason why we're here tonight is because somebody said something. You see, God speaks sometimes through people saying something that we need to hear. There are many interventions. They're not only on A&E. Somebody says something, and it can change your life. Nobody said anything. So I never changed. One of the things you learn in Al-Anon, and by the way, I'm somebody who attends Al-Anon every week. If there are no consequences, There will be no change. Silence for the alcoholic is a killer. When you say you love somebody to death, some people have done that. They haven't said a word. So, I go back after the funeral to my old ways. And of course, I'm still doing services. Now, I'm a lot more careful when I do a funeral. But one day I was doing a baptism. Now, all you need to know with this baptism is it was a big baptism. A lot of people were there. Some people had flown in. It was 400-500 people. All of this is happening in England. I've not got to America yet. All of this is happening in East Grinstead, Sussex. Now, I've been drinking, but I wasn't drunk. But I was mellow. Do you know mellow? Mellow is when you just don't need any help. Give me the baby. And will you give me the baby? Give me the baby. I baptize the baby in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Daphne. The mother let loose such a scream. She says, that's not his name. He is a little boy. I said, he's Daphne now. She said, is there anything we can do about it? I said, no. Forever and a day, he will be called Daphne. But this mother of this baby, she's not like the funeral group. She wrote a letter to the bishop. Now, a bishop's only an employer dressed in purple. She wrote a letter to the bishop, and the bishop called me the next day. Just after breakfast, 9 o'clock. He said, Booth, that's my name. He said, it's Bishop. I says, hi. He said, I want to see you tomorrow, 10 o'clock. I thought, wonder why the bishop wants to see me. Because I'm an alcoholic. I've moved on, we don't stay. Tomorrow is another day. I go to see the bishop and he says, I've got a letter. It's a letter. It's a letter. I said, good. He said, it's about you. Are you sick? Are you sick? Are you demented? Are you having a nervous breakdown? And then he looked at me straight in the eyes. He was a small man. He said, had you been drinking? No, had you been drinking? Now see if you can identify with this. Who? Me? Swear on the Bible. He didn't believe me. You want to know what this bishop said? This was in 1976. He didn't send me to AA or to a treatment center or to therapy. This bishop said to me, quit it. I said, what? He said, quit it. I said, quit it? He said, quit it. I said, I'll quit it. He said, good, quit it. You want to know a funny thing on a Saturday night in Mandan? I quit it for 6 months. But I wasn't sober. You know, Mark referred to it last night. There's dry and there's sobriety. Dry is abstinence. Years ago, churches used to push abstinence programs. You don't drink, you take the pledge. That's dry. That's not sobriety. You want dry? Take the first step, go home. Sobriety is the first step with 2 to 12. Dry is like a dry leaf. You ever had a dry leaf? You put any pressure on a dry leaf, it'll snap. Crack. Sobriety is when the leaf is supple. We learn to bend. What do we say? We live and we let live. Sometimes you meet dry people at meetings. Some of them could be here. There he is, sit there. Criticizing every speaker. Watching the time. They'll find fault with the big book. Find fault with the 12 by 12. A dry person can find fault with the toilet roll. By the way, you know if you're dry, because you can't wait for the smoke break. You see, you know. Maybe some people have to go through the period of being dry to being sober. But dry is when you don't want to be here. Sobriety is when you've found your tribe. Sobriety is when you've come home. Sobriety is when you understand that every person who gets up here is doing their best. Their very best in carrying the message. Trust me, I've been around a long time. Anyone can be a critic. It's the easiest thing in the world to be a critic. This program is about nothing less than producing spiritual giants. We don't settle. We don't want average. We go for excellence. For 6 months, I was dry. And then, in anybody's dry life, you know, chances are you're going to drink again. Always remember it was on a Tuesday. Now, people don't expect you to relapse on a Tuesday. You got to watch out for Tuesday. Creeps up on you Tuesday, just follows Monday, just before Wednesday. It's a funny day, Tuesday. But on a Tuesday, I got a telephone call to attend a girl's 21st. When I went there, There's a lady, and she says, "Excuse me, you're Father Leo, aren't you?" She said, "I've been to your church many times in Sussex, Brighton." I said, "Oh, really?" She said, "Yes, you're a hoot. A hoot. If I remember rightly, you drink gin and tonic." I said, "Actually, I'm drinking 7-Up. I've been drinking 7-Up for 6 months. I'm fizzed out on 7-Up." She said, "Let me get you a nice gin and tonic." Now, if you know anything about England, when you say a nice gin and tonic, it means a double. Just so you know, not that you're ever going to use it, but a nice. She came back with a nice gin and tonic, and I just drank it. 6 months not drinking. No AA, no spot, no, none of this. Alone. Alone am I with my dryness. But did you notice I only had one? It was read to us. Cunning, baffling, and powerful. Many of you thought, oh, if he had the gin and tonic, a nice one, that's it. He's a goner. No, no. I had one drink and drove home. But a strange thing happened, and sometimes in life you have strange things. I left my watch in the restroom. Next morning, I went back to get my watch. Same barman, same hotel where the party was. And I went back, and the man said, "You lost your watch?" I said, "Yeah, I lost my watch." I said, "I left it in the toilet, left it in the toilet." He said, "Here's your watch. I found it. Oh, and have one for the road. Have it on us." Same barman, same bar. 11 o'clock in the morning. I took that drink, and the lion was disturbed. And if you're an alcoholic, you know exactly what I mean. When I took that drink, it went down like honey. I'm talking honey. Honey, honey, honey. Honey, honey, honey. Hey, by the way, I had another one. It's 3. But I'm smart enough, I've got my clerical collar on and everything. I'm smart enough not to drink too much in there. So I went to another bar. By the way, in another bar, 3rd of July, 1977. And I'm driving home because the pubs closed at 3 o'clock in the afternoon then. And I'm driving home. My car hits a tree, hits the lamppost, and shoots up in the air like a rocket. The car goes up like a rocket. 2 old ladies in a garden say, "Look, there goes Father Leo." So he travels. Crash, bang, well, Crabbit talking crash. I go through the windscreen. You come talk to me, got 16 stitches back here. Only one hurt. I'm lying there. And I had a moment. Now you must understand, I call it a moment. I don't care what you call it. But you remember, if you quote me, it's a moment. A moment when I saw me. I stood outside of myself and I saw me lying on the ground in blood. Noises from the police and the ambulance. And I'm standing and I'm looking at me. And I don't like what I see. I don't like what I've become. I don't like who I am. There's a moment. Some of you have had that moment. Maybe not a car crash. Maybe you hit the woman that you love. And don't anyone say you don't love this woman. But she's in the kitchen bleeding and bruised because of you. There's many moments. Some people in this room woke up in a jail, and you know you're not a criminal. Sick, yes. Criminal, no. There are some mothers and fathers who tonight don't have children who want to speak to them. Your children, your family don't want anything to do with you. There's many moments in this room. In fact, it's the moment that creates the opportunity to change. And I would love to be able to say to you tonight that if you experience such a moment, you never get drunk again. But it's not true. It's not true. If you want to know the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's that we keep the moment alive. You could say many things about this program of AA, but I'll tell you what it really is. It is a program of remembrance. What he was like, what happened, that's the moment. And that moment is a process. Some of us have to have many moments. Some of us have moments in sobriety when we nearly drank again. When we get into behavior that prefigures relapse. AA keeps the moment alive. A moment when God allows you to see yourself as he sees you. And I picked up the telephone and I called that bishop from hospital. And as all of us find, when we ask for help, there's often help available. He sent me into treatment for 3 months. For 3 months, I went into treatment for alcoholism in England. By the way, the accident happened on the 3rd of July. My sobriety date is the 4th of July. I have never drank again. The 4th of July, 1977 was my first clean, sober day. Interesting, it was on the 4th of July. In England, we don't keep the 4th of July. It's not one of our favorite days. That's when you kicked us out. It was a terrible waste of tea. But in that 3 months of sobriety in the treatment center, I met you. I never really heard of you before. I was taken to meetings. And I loved you from the very beginning. I know some struggle with you. I never did. You were characters, as am I. You were rascals, as am I. Many of you lived on the edge, as do I. You are my tribe. You spoke truth to me in a way no church ever did. I was home. And the interesting thing, 1977, in a place called Crawley in Sussex, one of my first AA meetings, a Jewish woman shared. She'd come from Poland. And when she shared, 4th of July, summer's day, when she shared, her arm revealed the number. She had been in a concentration camp in Poland. She had suffered the Holocaust. She'd also suffered the disease of alcoholism. This little Jewish woman shared a story, and this Christian priest identified with everything she said. I cried when she cried. Oh God, I laughed when she laughed. And that's when I realized religion can sometimes divide, but it never divides the heart. I then stayed through treatment, and I went to a sober living for 6 months. I had 9 months. And in that 9 months, I started to think about my life. I became a different priest, less arrogant, more loving, more inclusive. I wrote a book called Spirituality and Recovery that was published in the United States. They brought me to the United States. They brought me to speak and give lectures in Memorial Hospital, Long Beach, California. I came to give those talks. The administrator asked me to be the spiritual director of the program. The rest is history. I came in 1980, and I've lived in Long Beach ever since. Spirituality is what drives me today. I will say hello to you first. I don't believe it makes sense to say you love God if you can't say hello to another human being. I have a lot to smile about, so I smile. Of course I can concentrate on negative things. Anybody can. But every sobriety day is a smiling day for me. I smiled even when I came to bury my father and my mother. My mother, by the way, had many, many years of her son's sobriety. She loved coming to the United States. She loved going on cruises with me. We had many years. You know, when you hear Zelda and Mark speak, they have many years together, 34 years. Same for me. My mother gave me my sense of humor. She loved me. It was my mother who said, before you judge anybody, walk 5 miles in their shoes. That way, when you judge them, you're 5 miles away and you've got their shoes. Oh, yes, we laughed. She died at 91. My father died 91 too. They died 6 months apart. My father was the first one to die. I have the wedding ring. This is their wedding ring. This ring, they died, 10 years ago? They were married 66 years, 76 years old. When he was dying, he had pipes all over him. Couldn't speak. He was dramatic, my father. Not like me. And on his deathbed, he was still dramatic. He did one of these with his little ring, you know? And I remember taking the ring, took the ring, and I looked at him. And I said, "What about the watch?" I got the watch. By the way, for those of you who have problem with laughter, I have a suggestion. Go home, take off your clothes, and look in the mirror. Believe me, God has a sense of humor. And if you're still not laughing, invite the neighbors in. This program, trust me, this program will change your life. There are many speakers. You have heard many. There are many there. Each one has a different twist. You know, it's the same song, but we all sing it slightly differently. You choose the artist. You choose the artist. I believe that when I got sober, I found a God that I never experienced before, not a God of judgment and hell, but a God who wanted me to affirm life and affirm Leo and live it to the fullest. I was raised to talk to you about hell and judgment. I don't believe that anymore. I believe that every human being in this room carries something of the face of God. And if I only can stay with you long enough, I will experience it. Having had a spiritual awakening, I'm no longer living somebody else's story. I'm living mine. For too many years, I listened to what other people felt I should do. What other people thought was right and wrong. What other people thought would give me happiness. In Alcoholics Anonymous, I found my own story. I didn't find it right away. But in the first maybe 5-10 years, I knew this God of Alcoholics Anonymous and you. Remember, you're not priests or nuns. You're not ministers. But you do more for humankind. And you ask nothing back. I find unconditional love in these rooms. Unconditional love. You see, I was raised all my life in the church. I now understand what spirituality is. Some of you know I came back on Monday from being in Vietnam and Cambodia. I take people who are in recovery to a different foreign place every year. The year before that, we went to Egypt. Before that, we went to China. Next year, we're going to southern India. Why do I do this? I do this because in recovery, and other people like me, I want to see the world. I want to see the world. In Alcoholics Anonymous, you gave me a new pair of spectacles, but I don't want to just read about it. I want to taste it. I want to taste it. I want to dance in God's spirit. I want to meet people who come from a different culture. I want to understand the religion of others. I want to understand this world that I've been fortunate enough to have a rebirth in. This last 34 years has been incredible. If you want any more information, by the way, afterwards, take my card, stay in touch with me. It's a shame if we can only see each other every 5 years. So I come to the end of the talk, remembering that you are my family. And occasionally, in sobriety, you are given something which is spontaneous. You say things spontaneously. Some weeks back, months back, I was at my morning meeting. I go to a morning meeting, 7 o'clock in the morning, Marina Pacifica in Long Beach. And I came up to Starbucks, and I was sitting all on my own. And in front of me was a young man who must have been about 20. He had his hair colored red and yellow, like stripes green and yellow and red, pink. He got my attention, and he saw me looking at him, and he said, "Have you never done anything exciting in your life?" And I said, "Yes. Once I had sex with a peacock." And I wondered if you were my son. I tell you, I never would have thought of that if I was drunk. That's sobriety. So it's 20 years ago, and I'm at a convention, 2,000 people in Atlanta. Like this, Atlanta, 2,000 people. And I'm speaking similarly, and I shared my moment. And I'll end with this. People come and say hello, you know. Thanks for your talk. This guy comes up to me and he says, "My name's David." Shook my hand. He says, "I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict." I loved what you said about the moment. I said, "Did you have a car crash, David?" He said, "No. But I had a moment." And nobody had ever said it like you said it. You see, I was in my apartment and I knew I was going to go out to use. I knew that. And I was getting ready to go out. And I was putting my coat on. And the radio was on. And he said, "Have you ever listened to a song but never heard it? Have you ever listened to a song many times but you never heard it?" I said, "Yeah, I suppose I have, really, David." So because I was getting ready, I know the story. I go to see my dealer and then I drink. And just as I was going out, the song that I'd listened to so many times came on. And he says, the reason I'm telling you is because the group that sang the song came from your country. It was the Beatles. I said, no. And he said, it's just stop. And I called my sponsor. He gave me a moment, the song. I said, what were the words of the song? And he told me. The words were these. Maybe in the whole talk, this is all you remember. And it's enough. The words were, when I was a young man, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now those days have gone. I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind and I've opened up the door. So help me. Help me if you can, feeling down. And I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you please? Please help me. And he said, Father Leo, I made that call and there was help for me. By the way, that's the message of tonight. And that's the message of what you're doing at these conventions. The guy who just was celebrating a few days, along with the gentleman who's got the most years in this place, a part of this process, this message of help. I hope when you leave this room, you will be granted three things. I hope you will live again like you've never lived before. I hope you will love again like you have never loved before. And thirdly, I hope you laugh like you've never laughed before. Thanks for listening.